Okay. Lastly is my my last treasure, my Conan collection. Yay! I have about 12 of these Chronicles of Conan, which the compiler Roy Thomas had specifically explicitly compiled all the short stories and basically aligned them in a timeline run. So it starts off with Conan the Barbarian, who is, as you can see, he does not look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got black hair. He's got jet black, straight mane. He's got blue eyes, and he's probably about around 6'2" is what he's expected to be. About 6'1", 6'2", which was pretty tall, very large for a guy. At least back in, the 50s, when Conan was written by Robert E. Howard, something like that. But I have 12 of these, and these were, about $16 a pop. Eesh. And then I have another set by Kurt Busiek and a couple other guys. This basically follows the short stories also in a different arrangement. And these are also the same price, a little bit better price than, for what you get out of these guys. These are a little bit better, about $16, and there's about 6 of them. Then I have basically the short stories, the actual collection of the short stories. What is it, like 21 or 26 short stories altogether? Well, they're not like that short, obviously. Of Conan, all written by Robert E. Howard. His total collection and everything. And basically, then I have one more thing. Besides my Betty Page, Conan the Barbarian by Roy Thomas again. Basically, it covers over everything, all of his history growing up. It covers where he comes from, which is the land of Samaria, of course, because he's Conan the Barbarian, which is basically a northern country comparable to like where Scandinavia is at. They have wars with the Aesers and everything, who are basically Scandinavians and everything. But anyhow, what to say about Conan? I grew up collecting Conan comics when I was a teen. What attracted me to Conan is that he is like a big pimpin' dude. Like he wasn't really a hero. He was kind of like an anti-hero. In fact, he wasn't. I don't think he was a hero at all. He was just a man who just did his thing. That's all there's to it. What was his thing is that he liked to loot shit. Kill beasts and monsters and gods and magicians and get laid. That's like about as manly as you can get, man. But the thing is that he has a progression. He got out of his country when he was about in his mid-teens, about 15, 16 years old. And got out of Samaria after dealing with some raids against the Aesers, and went and moseyed down south to go sow his seeds and find the world, because there ain't jack shit up in Samaria. And so he migrated down south in his teens and became instantly a thief, and he did a lot of loot quests and everything, and met a lot of women, and also was trained to become a master thief through other thieves. And he became an assassin to a degree also. And then he went into more professional means and became basically a sellsword or a mercenary, a sword for hire. And through his fightings, I mean, and of course he was basically almost unmatched for most of the times. There's some guys who are a little bit faster than him. There's some guys who are actually more powerful than him, even though he's about the same size as Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe even a little less muscular than Schwarzenegger actually was. He was, at least for Conan the Barbarian, that movie part, well, that was like a whole slap of a bunch of stuff, little short stories together, smooshed into one. But Thulsa Doom was his ongoing, basically, nemesis throughout the series. And he's also went against other magicians and everything, but, what was I going to say? Anyways, he progressed from a sellsword, a mercenary, to eventually shining through that and becoming a general. And then he eventually, in his 40s, I mean, he got off the battlefield and everything, and he was like, from being, you know, panther-like, fast and strong and athletic, to being just a god of war, just like what Arnold Schwarzenegger it was in Conan the Barbarian, just thick and grisly and everything. Like, okay, like this is him in his youth. This is in volume 1 and everything. Let's see here. Later on, towards the end. Oh, hey. This is an Ernie Chan version of Conan. That's the version, I think the Savage Sword of Conan series, I believe, or the Chronicles of Conan, where Ernie Chan did his art, and I really like that art. But he was basically, yeah, thick and blocky, and just a powerful god of war and everything in his later years. And yeah, he was also a buccaneer, and everything like that. He actually had a lot of character progression and everything. And the thing is that Conan, personality-wise, he was very aloof. He was very independent. He wasn't attached to anything or anyone. He had the girl of the month. He had actually 3 ladies that was close to him. One was, yes, Red Sonja. She was never a love mate, though. He just admired her sword skill, but that was magically induced for the most part. But there was a gal, her name was Valeria, who was, I think she was a merc or an assassin or a thief, I can't remember. But anyways, they got along together for a while until she died. And then also Belit, who was basically the pirate queen, who she kind of commandeered the ship that he happened to be on. And he was the only one that survived the onslaught of all of her buccaneers, and she was so enamored with his fighting prowess that, yeah, she was like, "Hey, you're gonna be my mate." And so, new adventure for him. He basically he and she ended up like looting all along the coast and whooping ass, and until she eventually died during one adventure, unfortunately, and he was really saddened. But Belit was, like, I think the closest of a love mate as he's ever had. Most of the women were just come and go and everything. So Conan was pretty much aloof and kind of carefree, but he was really responsible. He was very loyal to the people he was to safeguard, and believed that needed to be safeguarded. and everything. He had a great amount of ethics. Yes, he stole, but I mean, that's an exception. For him, that was like surviving, and he stole from rich people. Of course, he was kind of like, well, he wasn't like Robin Hood because he kept the he kept the loot for himself for the most part, and everything. But a couple things, some background behind why Conan is, why Robert E. Howard created him, is that Robert E. Howard himself, he was a man of adventure. He would be called basically a man's man. He liked to go hunting, and he loved to go adventuring. He was not religious. He didn't believe in religion or anything, and basically Conan's personality is a reflection of his own to a great degree. Robert E. Howard, he truly believed that a man creates his own destiny. There's nothing fated at all. And so that's the magic behind Conan, is that and a lot of times he ended up facing magicians and gods, or basically, some kind of monsters, but people worshipped them and everything until he killed them by sword and might. But there was a lot of times where, he was overmatched by magic, and that was his weakness, supposedly, was magic. Because how do you physically contend against magic that binds you or damage you from a distance or whatever? But the thing is, and this is the great thing about Conan, is that he never gave up in a struggle. And there were struggles where there was life and death. Of course, if he died, that would be the end of Conan. But he never died because he never gave up. He had great strength, even though he didn't have the greatest of all strength. There was other humans bigger than him that was stronger than him, but he used his cunningness and also his speed, which usually overwhelmed his foe to a degree. But with magicians, they were really, really tough to contend with, because he couldn't match his physicality against them, but he could match his cunningness and the strength of will against them. And even though he was possibly bound down, or he was suffering damage because of their magic, he never gave up. He always had the strength of will to persevere, the will to live. And that is the defining ingredient about Conan, is his will to live, the will to persevere, and to never give up hope. Because to give up, to not persevere, to lose hope, is ultimately to die. But if you don't want to die, you refuse to give up hope. You refuse to give in. You continue to persevere and struggle regardless of how tough the situation is, regardless of how it's stacked, and that it will carry you through and everything. Robert E. Howard truly believed in that, and Conan exemplified that through action in the comics and everything. He was able to overcome magicians' powers against him over and over again, not because of his strength, because his strength struggled against the magic, and he wasn't able to go against the magic physically, but mentally and willfully, he was able to eventually break the magic's grasp, And also, is the same thing with his struggles against gods. These gods were way bigger than him, like this monster spider. And other gods, I don't know if there's... But anyways... I don't know what's going on there. Some kind of kraken thing. But even in the face of death, he continued to struggle to the very end. And luckily, he survives and everything. So that's the most important thing to get from reading Conan the Barbarian and learning whatever you can from him and his travails, is that he is a human. He relies on his strength and his abilities and his mind, and through those he's able to persevere and find success and victory even in the face of certain defeat. You never let something take you down or what have you. The Sumerians do have a god of war in particular. His name is Crom. Everyone knows him, Crom, but they don't know what Crom is about, except that, Arnold Schwarzenegger says that something to the fact that he knows that he probably won't listen to his prayer or his last desperate plea as they're going to get surrounded, but know that, I'm going to go down in a gust of glory. But Conan never had prayed to the god Sumerian in any of the comics. He always acknowledged Crom, that he was basically an impartial god. He was an impersonable god, that he had nothing that he wanted to do with man altogether. And to tell you the truth, that is to the T my core beliefs about nature. It's chaotic, it's non-discriminatory, it is impersonable. It doesn't care whether you're alive or dead, because it's way bigger than you. But the thing is that, people like magic, the application of magic, trying to use nature or their faith set beliefs to control the powers of nature in their own doings and everything. But in the end, it still will not match up against the strength of will of man, which is there and real and everything. While magic is really ultimately just an illusion that one projects to themselves and unfortunately onto others, as they bind others with their prejudices and whatnot, according to their faith beliefs. Wow, that went on forever. I really like Conan. I really just enjoy the works that Robert E. Howard put out, and just in principle what Conan really stands for and everything. He's his own man. He doesn't answer to anyone at all. I mean, he just settles shit his own way. That's all there is to it. So, I mean, how can you not respect that, right? So, and one thing, he's never laid a hand on a woman. That's the other thing. Even though there's one woman that continued to do him dirty, and he was like, I'm done with you, and he dumped her in a gutter full with filth and water, and basically said, hey, that's where you belong, because that's who you are, and everything. But other than that, he has never laid a hand on a woman, no matter how misogynist he comes off as, and everything. And that's really important to know also. So, he's a pretty fair-handed guy. For what he's worth. Alright, I better end this. Bye.